Hello everybody, welcome to episode 234 of Show For You, which today we'll be going over episode 2 of Bleach 1000-Year Blood War Core 4, The Calamity. So we start off with this episode, we get a brief flashback of Orihime during, we're speaking with one of her classmates. I can't remember what the classmate's name is for the life of me, but it's one of the ones we've seen before. And so then, after that, we start getting to the meat and potatoes episode of the episode, where we see as the battle between Asuka, Urahara, and Yoruichi continues. And here we see, as it looks like it's not going to go very well, we see as Asuka ends up pulling out his ultimate ability here, describes it, kind of lays it out, and then we see as Urahara is left to handle this. And how he handles it is he whips out his Bankai. This is one of my favorite Bankai of like the entire series. It is so sick, especially how it's animated here. And we see then as the fight between Asuka and Urahara like unveils, and it is a phenomenal fight. It is very good. And ultimately ends up ending with Urahara apparently winning. And I guess kind of describe what Urahara's Bankai does there for a second. And what it essentially does is it reconstructs anything it comes in contact with. So we see at first as he like uses this to slash open Asuka's arm. But Asuka is obviously able to adapt due to his ability to adapt to like spiritual pressure and stuff like that. And so then after that, like, we kind of see as it plays out. Ultimately, Asuka is apparently beaten by Urahara, but we didn't see as it doesn't actually end up playing out as such, and then Asuka is able to get back up. However, Asuka has a vital flaw in his ability, because what his ability allows, like, it creates like this massive barrier in like a area around him, and we see as he mentions about how it's inescapable. We see as Urahara's like trying to figure out how to escape it and all that, but he can't. But it is not impenetrable. And we see, in fact, that Grimmjow was able to get into this barrier while the fight between Urahara and Asuka was going on, and he ends up sneaking up behind Asuka, punching a hole through his chest, ripping out his heart, and Grimmjow ends up finishing him off. However, this is not before, not before Asuka's ability starts to crumble down, and we see as now Urahara and Grimmjow are threatened. So then we end up going back to the progression of Orihime and Ichigo. We see as they're able to break into the big throne room where Yhwach is. And here they end up starting the fight with Ichigo sending a Getsuga Tensho at Yhwach. So the battle is beginning. And then we end up getting a brief kind of look. We see as Yhwach is actually able to ward off the Getsuga Tensho pretty easily. And then we end up going back to the fight between Uryu and Haschwald. And in this fight, we kind of see as Haschwald ultimately ends up getting to a push to a point where he has to like transform. It's really honestly kind of sick looking transformation. And then we end up going back to the Ichigo and Yhwach fight. And we see as Ichigo gets knocked back and Orihime ends up helping with her barriers and all of that. But it is not really enough because Ichigo is dead set on what he wants to do. And we see as Yhwach kind of like rage baits him a little bit by talking about his heritage and all of that. And mentioning about how Yhwach is like his true father and stuff like that. So we then see as Ichigo gets very reckless, and he heads at Yhwach, full force plan to attack him, and Yhwach flicks him off like a flea. Like, this is nothing. So I'm really curious of what Ichigo's going to have to do to even stand a chance against Yhwach, because at the current point, Ichigo ain't going to cut it. So I'm excited to see where this plays out. Because, like, the last major thing we saw in this episode was Ichigo getting knocked away by Yhwach. So, I don't really know how this is going to play out. Because, like I said, I haven't read the Bleach manga. However, I am very excited to see how it does. Because Ichigo is obviously going to have to get some power-up or something of some sort for him to go toe-to-toe with Yhwach. Because Yhwach is simply too powerful at the moment. So, I'm really excited to see how that goes. I'm also really excited to see what happens with Grimmjow and Urahara while the barrier is collapsing. And I'm also very excited to see how Uryu versus Haschwald ends up going, because this fight is really cool, and I've always loved the Quincy abilities, honestly, almost more than the Soul Reaper abilities throughout most of the series. So I'm just super excited to see how that plays out. And yeah, that wasn't really much for Bleach 1000-Year Blood War Core 4 Episode 2. However, it was a great episode, and I highly enjoyed it. It was very hyped, very exciting, and you need to go and watch it. So that's all, like I said, that's all it really was for that episode. That's all I really have for episode 234 of Show For You. So thank you very much for watching.